Hey y'all, it's Sarah. As you can see in front of me, I've got mini Verse burgers. This is my first time getting my hands on any of these. I just got my first one last night, so I've already started tinkering with it to make it my own, and I'm ready to jump in and share what I did. A lot of these are repeats from things that I've shared before. I'll try to link whatever videos apply down below, but I'm not going to promise y'all anything. I'm not always the best at doing that, but they are things that I've shared previously in videos. I know that for sure. Let's jump in and talk about it. So you can see the difference here. This is one that I've already started playing with, this guy right here. And this is just what these particular things look like straight out of the package. The bun straight out of the package, the meat straight out of the package. And this came with this lettuce and tomato, and it came with the cute sliced cheese, which is adorable, by the way. But I'm not using either of those, and I'm actually bringing in some things that you guys have seen me make, which is my red onion / purple onion, depending on where you're located and what you call those. I've already shared videos about doing DIY lettuce. I wasn't a big fan of that lettuce, one, because of the thickness, because you can see it's a little thicker, so it'd make that burger really stack high. And I'm probably not going to use the tomato slices out of here because I feel like I'm going to be a hoarder and keep those tomato slices because you can see the design and detail on those. So I'm probably going to want those for something else. And I'm going to cheat with that. So let's dive in and talk about what all's going on here. So as we're getting started, let's play with our buns. That's the first thing I started with. And those are the buns just as they came out of the packaging. I have not altered this one at all, but I'm going to, and I'm going to bring out a few things you've seen me use already. One being some of my furniture markers. And honestly, guys, I'm not super devoted to any brand. I got all of these from Dollar Tree, although I've had some people say they haven't found them there yet. Every time I've ever looked, because they usually come in some kind of 3-pack, every time I've ever looked, they usually have a different brand. I have no accounting for what they're exactly going to look like, but most of the colors are fairly similar. A lot of times they'll have a light, a dark, and usually like a walnut, I think is how a lot of them come. But these two are both kind of light colors. I'm going to play with these. This part that I'm about to do is wholly unnecessary unless you're just an extra person, and I am. So I'm going to start with just the inside of the bun, and like I said, you're not really going to see this unless you do like, you be all cool and trendy and do a deconstructed burger on a plate, and that would probably be pretty awesome. But I'm taking this light color and tapping it around the edges to get my buns toasted. Something like that. I wasn't even really paying that much attention. I just tapped it along that edge. Now, I did notice there is a slight difference in these two that I have, even though the colors are pretty much the same. There is a difference. One's older than the other, so the ink disperses a little different than the other. One's really a little drier than the other. So in doing that, you can see I can come in and get a little lighter color. It's not necessary. You could do the same thing by tapping it on and tapping it off. So my hands always look gross because I will absolutely touch all of my projects this way. But I'm just tapping it in. Can you see that difference of how that bun now is starting to look like it was actually thrown on the grill? And you might even want to do it to the bottom side of it. You might want to tap a little in. Take it along this edge, so when it's sitting there, especially if you've got it sitting on a white plate, you might actually see some of that grilled toastiness show. It might not show on my surface here, but on a white plate or the little paper that comes with these, the little sandwich paper, you might actually see some of that. But I did a little bit on both sides. You can do the same thing on the interior of your bun. And check that out. That is a big difference already just for the inside of our buns. I'm going to do something similar to this outside of it, but I'm taking it a little different direction. This is also Dollar Tree. It's their Crafter Square metallic marker. And it says metallic. It really comes out mostly flat white. And they've got these in several colors, but I love the white one. And I'm taking it where I tanned that one, or I browned that one. It looks all nice and buttery. The top bun, I'm taking the white around it, and this is very subtle, especially since, if you can see, I'm tapping some of that ink off. So I'm tapping it on there, or I'm rubbing it on there, and then I'm tapping a little off. And if you do something like this, and you don't like what you did, if you hit it fast enough with some rubbing alcohol, you can usually clean it off. Most inks will. After this sits for a little while, it'll kind of soak into this rubbery plastic, and it's pretty set. Now you can see that bottom edge of that part is just a hair lighter. It's just slightly lighter. And I'm going to come in now with some of my chalks. Whoops, still got that sitting there. Some of my different chalks. This one is this particular company. I don't know. I've had this a long time. I don't know if this place is still in business, but you can always use other artist chalks. I've got another palette sitting here that I'll share with you. This one's definitely old. I've done busted it. I've got something close to this. You can even use, like I said, this rubber material will kind of pick that stuff up. And as long as you're not cleaning these things off with rubbing alcohol or something like that, eventually it almost stains that rubbery material. So you could always come in with something like this if you wanted to. I like to give options. That way you ain't got to go out and buy new supplies just to do something like this. You could try to use your markers and tap that in place. The main reason I didn't go that route with one of these markers is because it's got the little sesame seeds on there, and I didn't want to get too much color caught in those. So I thought powdering it on would be my best bet. And I think I'm going to go in with like this brown kind of color here, maybe mixed with a little bit of this golden that's similar to the goldenness that you'd find on buns. And I'm just going to start tapping that in. So I'm tapping my brush into the color, and I'm starting right there at the top. That's where my darkest spot is going to be, because if it was getting baked, that's the part that is closest usually to your heat elements. So I try to think about that, but I don't take it too deep. I'm not one of those real artists that naturally thinks about those things. I just kind of guess. I use a little common sense and logic, and it tells me that that's the part of the buns that's closest to the hot stuff. So I've got a little fallout from the dust. I'm going to tap it down into there. I might do that a couple of times to get a little darker each time in that center point. Then I'm just tapping that off. So you can already see there is a lot different look just than the bright yellow plastic, and it really didn't take all that much. It takes longer for me to explain it than it does to do it, but there are lots of people that are kind of visual and they need to see those things. The next thing I'm going to do is come back in with this white marker on. I noticed something about the buns. So they've got some raised areas, right, for the little sesame seeds. And then they've got the sesame seeds painted on, and you're covering some of that when you do your shading or your powder. And the funny thing I noticed was that the painted spots don't necessarily align with the raised spots anyway. So I'm just going to try to make a few of those pop out. And as I touch it and move this thing around, and my already covered fingers, my powdered covered fingers here. It's probably going to lighten some of that right now because it's super bright white. You can see it's super bright white. Some of that's going to rub off. And I'm just hitting a few of those raised ones that are literally not painted at all. And you might have to turn it to different angles so you can see them a little better. But just a little bit, nothing major. Let that sit for a second. I might tap a little bit more of that over those. And then as I do this to knock that extra powder off, it tones down those other sesame seeds, the kind of blank ones, and they start popping off of that bun. So let's talk about what I did with my meat patty. And I did a couple things just playing with my meat patty. I'm going to try to reach over here and grab this guy. Mine is not put together. It's just stacked for the moment. And I don't know if you can kind of see some of these subtle things. One of the first things I did was come back in with my furniture marker. One of the dark ones. You can go with this style. You could do alcohol markers too, but I like using this as an example because not everybody wants to go and buy a full set of alcohol markers. But these colors seem to work really well with food items. And you only got to buy them in a 3-pack. So either which way, something along this line. And I brought those in. Started doing like with anything else. I'm tapping it around the edge. You could leave it just like that. It'd be fine. However, and it's got some texture to it that marker will pick up on. It's got some texture to it. But I did go in because one, I don't know if you noticed right at the beginning, there are some little spots. You see the manufacturing spots. And just some little jagged plasticky pieces around the edges of mine. So I just took a little fine file, just a fine grit file. And I'm roughing those edges up some and taking a few of those little weird plastic spots down a little more even so that at a glance, not only that, but you can see, like, you see the line through there, that line. This takes a lot of that down, so if you do use resin for things like your ketchup or your mustard, that resin doesn't dip into those places and make them a little more noticeable. So now it's starting to look like frozen patties. But it did make a difference overall of just something that small. And getting the overall realism or that less plasticky look at the end. So you can see it's taken a lot of that down. Now I don't have to worry as much about those spots showing up or looking more enhanced once I add the different colors. I'm just doing very similar about tapping those edges. You could always enhance your grill marks if you wanted to. If you notice, they're a little different on each side. You could enhance your grill marks with a marker or a pen if you wanted those to show up a little more. But you can start to see that's looking a little cooked. This marker by nature has a when it dries, it has a little bit of a natural shine to it. So you're almost getting that shiny, moist, juicy look to it. So let's see if I can get it to focus so you can see the edges a little better. And you can take this as far as you want to. It depends on if you were a medium, medium rare, medium well kind of person. And I'm just spinning it around, tapping some of that in. I might even give it a second or two to dry and then add another layer, so in some spots it'll go even darker. So you can kind of see that here. It's got a few spots that look even darker now. Once I gave that first layer of the marker time to soak in if you will, or stain in. Now, you will notice that there's something slightly different about my burger here. And it was an accident, but I'm going to share that accidental discovery with you. And you can use it or not use it. You don't have to, because I think you're going to get just as good of results this way. But I don't know if you can see that it's a little more rounded out. The edges are honestly a little more natural, like what you would get to a burger. So here's what had happened. And you don't have to do this, but I'm going to tell you how this occurred. I wanted to see if I could make the cheese melt down on my patty, like actually melt down. Although the cheese itself is a pretty cool texture, but it's kind of rubbery and it did not want to melt. But here is how I got this more natural edge to mine. I put those together because I thought I was going to melt them down. Now, don't use a lighter. That's not going to work because this yellow stuff will just curl up and turn gray. I did figure that out. But you could take a heat gun, which I've got a little heat gun handy. Just, not even an expensive one. I got this one. You can also do this with a blow dryer. If you've got a really good blow dryer that gets hot enough, you could probably do the same thing. This is such a really small, thin piece of plastic. But what had happened is, as I was trying to see if I could get this little plastic cheese slice to melt down over my patty, it actually didn't melt the cheese at all. But it did start to slightly melt the edges. Now, if you're going to do this, do it in a well-ventilated area. These things are plastic. I have nail materials, nail fans, the kind of things that you protect yourself with in my little creative space. Do this somewhere big. Don't snort melted plastic. As I sat and tried to do this, those edges started to melt a little bit on the burger patty. And it really gave me a more natural shaped patty instead of a bunch of patties that look, I don't know, the best way I can describe it is one of these patties looks more like your frozen McDonald's patties, and then the other one, the edges look a little more realistic. That's how I ended up having that happen, and you can see it start to occur right there. Can you guys see that? Didn't take much. It's a very thin plastic. It really didn't take much. So that started giving me a more realistic cooked edge to a burger. I'm going to set that to the side. So I've got it kind of melted, and I know my videos get ridiculously long sometimes, but it's these kind of cool things that I like to share. And you can see there's a little more natural cook around the edges to this versus a frozen patty and a cooked one. You don't have to do that. I don't recommend doing it anywhere that isn't well ventilated, but you can see what ended up happening. I did not try this with like a lighter or an open flame. I don't know that I would. It's kind of a risk of it going up in heavy flames, but I did like the end results. And now I've got what looks way more cooked to me than this little guy. Even though it's cute, I still like this version better. Now we can talk about ingredients. And I've got my cheese. You could probably make some sliced cheese with resin with no issue. I would try it on wax paper. Shape your wax paper around your patty and do your cheese, cure it, and then peel it off your wax paper and set it back on your patty. You could totally do that. However, I was completely fascinated with their cheese. It is pretty cute. Now I'm just going to pop those in place. And at this moment, I have a really decent cheeseburger. But I'm going to take mine further because that's what I do. And one of the things that I used is I just stuck all the lettuce that I made. I did this video. This is garbage bags and markers. And you can see this, all the wonderful lettuce that I've got here, all the different types. of colors that I threw in. So I'm going to use this one. For one, it'll allow me to stack my burger a little better. And you'll see I chose that reason for a couple of things, to be able to get a better stacked burger. That's why, part of why I'm not using the lettuce and tomatoes here. But I'm going to use some of this, my plastic trash bag lettuce, and that's what I'm throwing on my burger. And I'm also going to make my own pickles, and I'll share what I did. Let's pull that out. I just used one of the glue sticks that I got that came in colors. I'm sure you guys have seen these kind of glue sticks, and never in my crafting life have I actually really used these for a whole lot as far as in my glue guns, because it's always so hard to clean them out, but I have found other uses for them. This one is kind of a lime green color. And these are the skinnier ones, not the chunkier ones that I've used on other videos. These are like the skinny type. I just came in with a craft knife. And if you don't have any of these, or you can't find any of these, I suspect you could do something real similar with a crayon if you can get it cut evenly. If you've got a good strong hand that you can cut through that crayon wax, you probably could do it with a crayon. And actually, this inchworm color is almost pretty close to what I'm using out of this glue stick, in case you're wondering. But I'm coming in, and I did not even do a great job at slicing these. I went a little narrow as I went down, because it got a little harder for me as I went to cut through. And so I got bits and pieces of slices, which should work out fine, because when I add my ingredients around my burger, I'm going mostly around the edge. So I'm going to try to slice into there somehow. And you see this one's not a super even slice. And that one's not a super even slice, but it's enough for me to show you what I did. So once I got my slices, I grabbed an alcohol marker. In this case, this one is a number 42. It's called Bronze Green. It's probably not the only green you can use. It's the one I picked, though. You could have brighter, fresher pickles. These are going to look more like they've been canned longer. I don't know if that makes any sense, but some pickles look a little brighter green, and some look like they're a little darker. This one goes kind of in the darker, more olive range. And I'm just going to try to get a little of that marker down the side. Some of it may get on the edges. I think that's probably okay. So you can kind of see that's already got like a pickly look. And they really kind of remind me of the pickle slices you get out of a pickle slice jar, because they are a little unevenly cut. And they're a little thinner or thicker in some spots. It seems a little normal and realistic to me. So I'm just going to spin that around, get some color on all those edges. And given that this is hot glue, you could probably heat up the tip of something like this with a little flame. I'm not saying you have to do this, because it's really not all that important, but I will share. Wait, let me grab this other pickle. This one little slice I've already got done. You guys see me struggle. I'm trying to do that with my left hand, and it has no clue what it's doing. So that one had some of the unevenness from, let me just show you, the very tip of that glue stick, I guess where it's manufactured, and the machine kind of ends those little sections. And if you notice, it almost gave it like some pickle look. Hopefully you can see those. I've got them just all sitting there drying out. I've got a little stringy I might need to nip off of there. I know there are methods to making these things in clay. That is not my skill set. I am kind of a hack that just wants to play, but I'm using shortcuts that I find that work for me. This is passable enough for me. And if I stacked something like this on these burgers, at a glance, maybe to a real miniaturist, that would be terrible. But since I'm not an actual miniaturist, I'm just kind of somebody that picks this up as a hobby. These are completely good to me and actually kind of tickle me for how easy they were to create out of stuff like this. Things that I happen to typically have around in my craft space. So now that I've done that, the only thing left for me really is to put my burgers together, but I wanted to share all the steps that I got to some of these bits and pieces, and you can stack them any way you wish. I have seen a lot of people talk about not being able to get the burger to stick to itself even with resin. So one way to get around that is to use some kind of glue to adhere them, which is likely the direction I'm going to go. But if you're really set on using your resins, you need to get into there from every angle. You can't just set it under your light or run it through your little oven or any of that just upright like that, because part of what makes that light work is the light itself actually has to hit that resin. And given the way these are stacked, there's no translucency here. You've got to get it from some kind of angle, which means you need to be hitting it from the side. If you're running it through your lamp somehow, you need to get from every angle or just adhere them in some other form. And that way you get maybe a little better adhesion together. There's only one other thing that I would recommend around these edges as I'm looking at it, is coming in, and it might work better with, let me get a craft blade, might work better with this. I'm going to rub that around those edges. Can you see that fraying up just a little? Now that plastic is less finished, so it almost looks like the bun itself has a little bit of chrome, a little something like that, and it's not really affecting the quality of the plastic, just fraying it out instead of it being so molded and melted smooth. So you can see I get a little bit more textured edge, I guess. So I might do that all the way around, mainly this top bun. I'm not too much worried about the bottom one, but the top one. And I'm trying to just scrape it along there and lift some of that plastic up. And you might want to take that step before you do any of your coloration, but I think I'm going to be okay doing it now. Can you see now it's got a little more texture to right along those edges, and that's going to give a little more texture along the edge of your bun when you're overall in finished. And it's just little details like that that eventually add up and you get a more realistic finished piece. I'm going to continue to play with mine and get them put together and put to the side, because I have more grilling ideas and more of those things to play with to share with this, so that I get a whole kind of grilling barbecue spread. And I'll be sure to share those things as well as I go, and you can kind of compare a little. There's still a blank one that I didn't do, and you can kind of see the difference. So I thought this was a pretty cool little way to get some burger ingredients, or really ingredients for anything else. But now I've got those to go on my burger that are pretty realistic, and I still get to hoard these pieces for other things. And there's nothing wrong with these pieces. Honestly, they would have worked fine. And there are other things that I think I will just like them more in. I'm not knocking how they're made. They're exactly how they should be for this type of toy. But some things I like stuff like this for, and other things I like a little bit different look. That's all I got to share with you. I hope you picked something up from it, or got an idea or a technique that you can use towards some of your other items later. And maybe you didn't like any of it. Show me what you ended up getting with yours. That's all I got to share with you. Bye, y'all.